So today on Mr. Insurance, we have a local entrepreneur and friend of mine, Tanner Dallas. A lot of people know Tanner as the owner of Crooked Feathers Pizza and Wings. If you've ever had the most amazing food, you know who he is and what an amazing business that he has built. But what a lot of people don't know is that Tanner also has merged into the retirement space. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, so let me backtrack that a little bit. So we own Crooked Feathers, which is two locations, one in St. Charles, one in O'Fallon, and we also own Zero Gilza, which is a frozen pizza brand, which you've had those before too.
Yes.
And I remember when I first met you, I was getting into that. And kind of as Steve said, as time went on, realizing different strengths and different interests that I had, I got into the we'll vaguely put it just the compound interest, retirement, risk management space.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, Steve, you had a lot to do with that, actually.
I mean, I didn't know it at the time or whatever. I think we were just talking, life and business. I know that you had recently also become a dad, and you have a beautiful new little baby, which I see all the time, like floating in a raft with like a little hat and everything all the time. And it's really cool to see that, like when somebody, becomes a dad, because, as I was telling you when we were sitting there at breakfast, that, don't let those things pass you up. Like, don't make the same mistakes that I made. There's a big difference between working hard and working smart as well, too, So like I let work kind of consume me and overtake me. And, something that I would say like my ex-wife had said to me was never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about, being a new dad and just maybe like some of the perspectives that's changed, and, tell me a little bit about, I know, married life and everything else. And your wife is also involved in
She is.
your restaurant business. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to rewind it all the way to the time we first met,
Okay.
which was early summer of 2022, I'd like to say.
Hmm.
So little did you know at that time, like that was the roughest time period of our business. And I always like to trace it back to that because obviously when we first met, you didn't know certain things and we didn't know each other that well at the time.
Yeah.
But I definitely looked at you as a resource and somebody that could be a mentor and somebody that had experience doing the things that I wanted to do. And I mean, I was 26 at the time. It's still weird saying that. I feel a little bit seasoned through all the shit I've been through
I'm
lately.
feeling pretty old right now.
Yeah,
There's
but man, like little did you know in that time period, like we had three stores at the time. We had Cottleville, St. Charles, and O'Fallon. And from 2019 to 2022, we had expanded aggressively. And for me personally, like I got super over levered over that time.
Mhm.
Not in a bad way. It was great until the prime product we were moving tripled in price, which was 45% of our revenue. And then it turned our margins upside down, which is weird to think about. But like commodities like chicken wings, when they went from $50 to $60 to $160, our business turned red really fucking quick.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at like price of eggs, everything. It's all gone through the roof. It's affected every industry, including my own. Now I'm a lot better about keeping things close to the vest and keeping things behind the curtain, if you will.
Sure.
But I will tell you, during those times, I mean, I've talked about it before, that literally after COVID, overnight, we lost like 70% of our business. So it was a big panic attack all in one. And, being a former alcoholic and user, it really, really affected me a lot, and it really tested me. And I actually relapsed during that time. And a lot of people didn't know that. And it really kind of sent me the other direction, where I started getting focus off other things. But I pulled it together, went to my resources, kind of looked at my roots of what I had going on there, and started problem solving and looking at where's the next step? What am I going to do next? How am I going to do it? And then it actually created a thriving spot in our business. And it sounds like maybe that it created a detour for you, which also has been wildly successful.
It's funny you say that. You speak about relapse. I was somebody that always struggled with OCD and depression,
Yeah.
but this was the turning point for me where, I mean, most people really some people don't handle this very well. There's a time period where, I almost killed myself. It
Yeah.
was earlier that year, just because for me being 26 and 25 at that time, early 2022, being super over levered, we had a lot of debt on the table. We had expanded really quickly.
Yeah.
And then when we had first met, I was in the period of already closing down the store in the middle that wasn't doing as much business and was running red. And there was a lot of shit going on. But you speak of relapse, that was probably the hardest time of my life up till now during that time because it was stressful. You go from making 20, 30,000 a month as a 24 or 25-year-old.
Yeah.
And you're seeing negative 10,000, negative 15,000.
Yep.
You're liquidating your brokerage accounts. I sold my Model S I had at the time to get all the equity out of it. That's shit. As you're not telling the whole world that at the time.
Right.
But I will tell you, it was the best thing that happened to me because we had leaks in our business. There were holes in the ship. A great economy, great pricing, everything like that is what kept our business thriving because we were value oriented. Once pricing went away, once inflation started to rise, our whole model just broke off completely. We couldn't make money doing what we were doing. So when I had met you, we started doing the frozen pizzas, and that was just a play to pay for the rent at Cottleville. I mean, that was $5,000 on the books every month. It was like, okay, like what can I make on margins on these pizzas? How many do I have to sell? Where do we have to get them? And then that was how those started.
Fun fact, real quick here. You mentioned your not your office, your location in Cottleville. I actually looked at that space for one of my offices, so I know what kind of a nut that you had each month with that.
When did you look at it? Was it
like right as well? I think it was a tan company or whatever that was right next door, and it was like when it had initially first gone in. That was like a brand new building in that area, and then they started filling up and everything after that. But I would say it was even before that gas station was over there.
No shit.
It was definitely. But I can relate with that stuff and the downsizing and changing things around. And
it's horrible at the time.
Like you feel like a failure because
100%.
We're of the mindset that we always want to be looking up and looking out ahead and like what's the next goal, like where we're going to try to be able to accomplish. And when we start going backwards or being pushed backwards, it doesn't feel good. And there's a lot of people that really struggle with this, but nobody really talks about it. And that's something that I'm wanting to talk about more specifically in the professional development space, because everybody thinks that business is all sunshine and rainbows. And I mean, I don't know how many times that I've been kicked in the gut and it's just been like, how do I get to the next day? So I took this back to what they talked to me about with my addiction problems. I took it back to one day at a time, just one more day. Just one more day. Just be clean one more day. Don't take a drink one more day. And it was every single day I would get up and I would do it. And I was probably too stupid to quit, to be honest with you. But I can tell you, I mean, like it liquidated every one of my resources. I've got a picture somewhere about where I had all of my investment properties that were
you showed me that.
Yeah, it was a pretty rich profile of investment properties, and they were equity rich, right? And this is like kind of before like what I'm going to call the real estate boom, but I literally went through and took out loans on all these properties that I had paid off that were bringing me monthly revenue to be able to give my business CPR. And I don't know how many different people were like, man, he's not doing anything. He's not helping us. And I'm like, if you only knew, like the anxiety attacks, the nights when, I'm sitting up and like my heart's beating out of my chest, there was so much panic and so much worry. But the thing is that in these moments of stress, anxiety, you learn, you develop, you grow, you figure out ways to do it. So
it makes you stronger. Like and that's what I was going to ask you. Like how much, like it's one thing to fail, but I think like at that time period, and that's what I had to look at myself and say is like most people in this situation give up and then they go find their 9 to 5. They go do whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the thing I reminded myself was, you just went through the ringer for 5 years to do what you're doing. All that experience, everything that you learned, all the people that you met. If you quit, that's when you lose. It really is. It's like, it's when you lose. And it was like, it was an ego shift where I had to close the store down. I had to get those debts off. And going through that and making our business better is what made me a better business owner, made me more tactical, more strategic.
I
Because
guarantee it like puts things into perspective about employees and like who's with you, who's not.
100%.
The energy that comes through that door every day and how you want to be able to create an environment of of a winning atmosphere.
Well, I mean, it makes you more confident too.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like that yourself? Like when you went through that, like
Oh, I
if
do.
you look at back and you're like, man, I went through that shit. And now if I can come back from that, I can come back from anything.
Yeah.
And that was the change. Like that's what changed the game for me. It was like, it gave me confidence where it's like, I've been in a much worse situation. So I'm not scared to get in that situation again. Now, do we want it to happen? No.
Well, you had
But
like a baby on the way at the time.
I
And this is
did.
like the first one and everything else. It
It was
was like,
It was stressful, man. It was really stressful.
I can remember when Angie told me that she was pregnant with my first son, Jack, and that, like, I mean, dude, I was still living as a wild child, right? Like I was
And how
all
old
over
is
the
Jack?
freaking board. Jack is 12.
Okay.
So I know that's like it
2011,
you blink and it's
2020,
over,
yeah.
man. Yeah, but one of the things with my son Jack is that he's super into cars, right? So we had talked about at the time because we had some nice cars and everything, and you're looking at like you were talking about liquidating and everything else, right? My son, we're sitting and talking to him at breakfast, and we're talking about, hey, we might end up having to like put this on consignment and get rid of this because you don't like take it down. You don't take like a Ferrari down to
Sure.
a Toyota dealership, right? It's just not the way that things are sold. So you go to a broker and somebody that helps you be able to market and sell the car, and um, he talked me out of it. He was like, I've never known you to ever not face a
Your
challenge.
son?
Yes, of all people, right? Now, my son, I'm realizing day by day that it might not be a great thing, like as far as salesmanship for him to be around, because a lot of times he'll talk me out of different things or he'll sell me on different stuff. And like, like, how do you feel about this, Dad? And like the other day, he wanted $100 for some freaking shoes or something, right? Like,
And he sold you on it, didn't he?
oh, he did. He was like, I went ahead and, I pulled the side by side out and I started washing all the side by sides. And he was like, if you just move your car out here or something, I think you'll feel compelled to pay me, and, I'm like, wow, way to assume the sale. And you know what? I didn't stop it because I was instilling a hard work ethic, which a lot of kids are missing these days.
Dude, it is bizarre.
But I mean, I've been there, man. And like, I'll tell you, like, there's been some, you almost have to like, it's almost like dating, right? Like you have to like see which ones work and which ones don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to shut them off and shut them down. And that sounds terrible, but like, it's really the truth.
Sales is like dating, though.
Well,
Most people don't want to think it is, but it is.
So our business was going amazing, right? Our business was going absolutely amazing. Like, and when I ended up, my staff told me, they said, hey, we got this. Like, you've worked, you built this thing up, and just get out there and live your life. Like,
When
go
was
to
this?
the country club. This is probably like 2018,
Okay.
maybe even 2017, somewhere up in
17, 18.
And, I went, like what a lot of people do, right? They go to the gym, they start getting it back together and that kind of thing. I'm like trying to keep myself busy. And what happened out of that is I ended up getting involved with some guys to start a supplement company, right? So we were going to be a retail store selling supplements. And I ended up investing into this supplement company. And it ended up, later on down the road, obviously not going so well. Like the partnerships, they fell apart. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. There was a different work ethic. There were a lot of things in the background that were happening that weren't okay by me. And so ultimately, we ended up getting to the point where I ended up deciding that it was time to be able to sell, right? And I ended up doing that, but there was a big piece of me that felt like a massive failure because I felt like I let everybody down. Like I took that blame on myself that I was the one that was responsible for the company not doing that, not doing better. And I realized that, later on down the road that, sometimes like in business, like we all kind of look like when we're figuring it all out, we start looking for partners, right? And it can be a catastrophic thing. It's like choosing a spouse. Your spouse can either make you or break you. And there's a lot that a lot of people don't know. It's like everybody says where there's every good man has a good woman behind him or whatever, right? That sort of thing. Like the bee community. You don't see any like king bees in the freaking hive, right? You see a queen bee because the bees haven't figured out that like they got the queen bee in there. You take care of the queen bee and she's going to take care of you, right? But there isn't no king bee. Like it doesn't exist. And that's the thing with this stuff is that like when you find that perfect person that's going to enhance your life, like I see with your wife, like she's a big part of your business and
100%.
running things and being a mother and everything else, different hats that we wear. There's a lot of things that get also lost in translation that the moms and the spouses that they deal with that we don't even realize, during the time when all that was happening, my wife was having a really, really difficult time with it because, there was a lot of money that was going out and it was ultimately affecting our other business because that was what was ultimately funding things, right? So we just continued to keep putting out, and we weren't getting anything back in. We were just hitting the zero lineup and the negative lineup, and it ended up being like one of the best experiences in hindsight of this because it really taught me to really look at how to adapt, to overcome, and how to be able to get creative in those scenarios, which you go back to your roots. You either got it or you don't, And I'll tell you, man, like there's been other failed business attempts, and like, just like there was you know, a a warranty company that I had started, right? And it didn't go so well, right? It was a difficult market. It was very difficult, very expensive. And, we got a couple of bad mailings and, it just, the company went down and went belly up. And, you're sitting there and you're like, man, I just like put out like $500,000 for this thing to all just go belly up. And then you're left with the debts and all the other things, and everybody else walks away from it.
Sure.
And they don't realize that, like, well, we still are on the hook for that. You know what I mean? So,
I don't think anybody ever thinks about that. They don't. It's not in the typical mindset of most people. But like you've done though, your returns in business aren't like playing baseball. Alex Hormozy talks about this all the time. You can go and you can hit a grand slam with the bases loaded. The most you can score is 4 runs. We can go up and we can lose 500,000, lose 500,000, lose 500,000, but then you can knock one out of the park for 20 million.
yep.
As we were both talking about earlier.
Right.
So like I think that's like the biggest shift though is like I remember you talked about basically the healthcare industry. You were in that around 2009 and kind of
Yeah.
once Obamacare came around like that really affected what you were doing.
Yeah. I kind of dodged a huge bullet in that too. But I also decided I was going to self finance the book of business being sold. And what happened
Was
out
that
of
back then?
Yeah, it was, I kind of seen that coming along.
Sure.
And so I decided I was going to self finance. And what ended up happening is the market changed. It went way down. Commissions changed like dramatically in like 2009, like
In
when
what business?
Obamacare, healthcare.
Healthcare?
And the guy went belly up. He went bankrupt. And with that bankruptcy went all of the business that had to be used as collateral to be able to pay his bankruptcy estate. Well, I was planning on that money coming back to me, and I didn't end up getting that money back. So I found myself in a situation where I was still spending, like living my life as I normally was. And all of a sudden it was just like, you're done.
So that
And
was
all
your
of a sudden,
that was the
no more
first
money
kind of
coming in.
that was the first time you got your hands cut off a little bit.
Yeah.
My
I
God.
had, like tried to go back and restart some things and tried to kind of go back into the same business for a minute there. And, I found that like you can't make up for time, right?
No.
So if you got, 10 years in on a business and you got a certain amount that's coming in, you can't make up for that time. And in one day, I had 2 cars that was repoed off the lot. And then the very same day, I had the IRS stick their hands in my account and pull every dollar that I had out for payroll, right? And I'm like, hey, you guys can't do this. This is for payroll and everything. They don't care.
No, they don't. They
They
don't
don't
give a
care,
fuck.
right? They care about getting their money, and that's all they care about. So I've got all these people that I've literally wrote checks to, and they're getting ready to catch themselves a nice little bouncy ball.
So what'd you do after that?
I ended up going and selling one of my watches. I ended up selling jewelry. I ended, pawning stuff off. I ended up going and taking a loan out, I believe, against my car. I ended up doing things to be able to make sure that I was able to cover that and kind of, scramble to do what I could. The thing is again, people don't realize like these are the things that have happened in my journey. I probably should write a book about this whole thing and stuff. Like it's just the sales process. I've done every possible thing wrong that you want to do, well, don't want to do, right? But it's taught me a lesson every single time.
You kept building back up though, and I think
Yeah.
that's the thing people forget.
You kept
And
showing up. I mean, that's really the difference between people that make it and not, is you just show up.
But people think like, let's say that happens, people around you were probably saying, and like I've experienced this too. Well, you should just get out of it. It's too much risk. It's too much this, but it's like, there's almost like an addictive feeling to it. Like
There is.
I'm addicted to it, and I'm not
I don't like
ashamed
to
to say that.
lose. Yeah.
I don't like to lose, and like I'm competitive, and my thing always is like, now it's like I will outlast my competition.
Yeah.
Like you can beat the shit out of me, but I will outlast you, and I will get better
Yeah.
and continue to get better.
Yeah.
But I like it's stories like that when you had first told me that, when I was thinking that like a year and a half ago, where it's like, okay, like, I'm just going through the shit right now. And that's the stuff that like helped me keep going, because same thing for you. You've bounced back one time, two time. It may happen again. I don't think it will, but you never know what could happen. But at least it's like you can tie up your boots and be like, all right, let's get back to work.
Nothing is ever guaranteed in life,
Yeah.
man. And let me tell you, like the things that happen to you, it happens for a reason. I went and I had gone to this event that there was a bunch of speakers, like a mastermind, right? It was through our church. We went there, and one of the speakers was Tim Tebow, and he talked about the platform and the purpose. And he talked about how, he thought that his platform was supposed to be football, right? And he thought his purpose was to be able to share God's message. Well, God said, I still have the same purpose for you, but I'm going to give you a different platform to do it on, which is where he was at speaking in church. And he was able to go out on, TV and talk about, how he was thankful for this with God. And he was able to share his message maybe a little differently than anything else. And I found that really interesting because I feel like I have a message to put out there. I feel like that God's using my hands to be able to deliver that message, but maybe my platform is different in this regard. Maybe it's not the way that I think it is. Maybe it's his way.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think that's on the roadmap you're on though. But I mean, that's another question I have too, is like, you've built up 2 different times.
Yeah.
Did it happen faster the second time? Like, because you knew deep down, like what you had to do from the past experience to where you had the healthcare business, the supplement business didn't go right.
Yeah.
And then you got into, well, it was still insurance, correct?
Yeah.
Even during that. I mean,
Yeah.
did you start another company post the supplement stores, or were you?
Yes, I did. Like I said, that was the warranty company. They call it like vehicle service contracts.
That was just a
and
tough business to be
home
in.
warranties and like, a couple of different things. And it is a tough business. And I mean, like I can make excuses all day long. It just didn't end up working for me. There was a resiliency that, it's like if you weren't really part of the good old boys club
Sure.
or whatever, then like you were outside the circle of trust. And
For warranties and things like that?
oh yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of, that was a very difficult business because I thought, I was like, well, this makes sense. People are carrying, like they're keeping their cars longer, there's production issues, things like that. So they're keeping their cars longer. If something goes wrong with their house, like, I could see like that there was a need that was there. The thing is that, there was a lot of saturation in that market. So people had just gotten tired of it. They had just gotten tired of it. So like we tried a couple of different ways to be able to implement it. But what I realized in that scenario is that you need to keep your focus on one path. You need to be really good at one thing. And if you're good at multiple things, God love you. But if you focus on one thing, it'll be super successful. It's just like a relationship, right? You put into your relationship rather than trying to be able to look around at other places. You're going to be more successful with your relationship if you're focused on that relationship. Same thing when it comes to your job. We actually we did a little spin-off of my, I'm going to call it my high risk insurance company, right? So when we started getting into, what I'm going to call the toys, right? So we had the bad boys and then we had the toys. So it was still different levels of specialty risk. It was high risk, if you will, in a lot of scenarios there. But these companies, they were like, well, we need to see your book of business. And you'd show them like this massive success, right? And they're like, oh yeah, it's high risk business. So like that doesn't count. So you're at zero, right? In their eyes, you're at zero. You got nothing. And then you see all the stuff because I branded myself pretty well, right? So people think about like, okay, if I get a DUI, I'm calling Steve, right? So I'm gonna make sure I get insurance through Steve. I branded myself really, really well in that regard. But the thing is that the insurance company saw that too, and they didn't want to give me contracts. They wanted business and show a production level and everything else, their kind of business, not the kind I was writing, right? They just were like, yeah, that doesn't count. That business, they wanted to have it. So it was a catch 22 scenario. You couldn't get the contracts without the business, but you couldn't get the business without the contracts. So I found a different way. I found a way to be able to get it. I created a whole separate company that was Trustway, right? And Trustway Insurance was a different type of spectrum of that, right? And then what I did is I had Trustway that was in play there for the higher end type of stuff and that kind of thing. And we started doing really, really well with that. So then we kind of caught attention. And they're like, oh, well, this is the same guy that we were told no to, right? But joke's on you now, pal, because I just became super wildly successful just under a different name because it flew under the radar. And they had seen that, okay, this is what they're going to specialize in. And there's a couple of companies that we started with, and I wouldn't necessarily say they were like the best companies to go to, but you just made it work. And then you start getting better companies as it comes about. So a lot of agents, they run into the same thing, and then they get trapped under these like clusters, and they get trapped under these contracts with these aggregate type of companies, like where they offer them access to contracts and everything else. And they don't show them how to do anything. They don't give them any kind of resources. So these agents, that's great. You got all kinds of contracts. You got all kinds of options for your client, but you have no training. You have no direction. You have no nothing. And so what I did is I merged that together and I slowly but surely edited out the Trustway piece and I just brought it back together as Select Insurance Group. And then there's a Select Preferred and a Select Insurance Group, right? So as you can imagine, it's like you're either getting one or the other. And what happened is that people started seeing us for specialty risk. And again, I labeled that as the bad boys and their toys, right? But
Explain specialty risk.
so I posted a photo. I don't know if you'd seen it, right? So like there was like an 18-wheeler truck, like a Mack truck. And this thing, like the engine's all tricked out on the thing and it's slammed to the ground and it's got a wing on the back and there's no like trailer behind it or anything like that. These people, like what they would do is they deck this stuff out. Like we had military trucks. We had
How do they value cars? How does that work?
It's like a kit car.
I mean, so like that is specialized. Like you're not calling State Farm. You're not calling anybody for that.
Well, it was like the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, right?
I did see that.
So the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile was more of a kit car or like along the lines of more of like a collectible type of a vehicle, right? Because the kit was around, I forget what type of vehicle it was. It was basically like a truck. And then there was the hot dog, right? And you had where this vehicle, people are looking like, where the heck do I insure these things? And that's where they start looking to you. And there's a lot that's involved in this whole process. Now you've also got the insurance market that has shifted. And the insurance market, you have behind the scenes, I do a lot of research on this stuff. the insurance companies are buying into these technology companies, right? You have where they're buying technology companies because they're using AI to be able to predict what kind of customer is going to bring them the most profit. We don't want to think that insurance companies really want to, like, that they're in the business to make profit, but they definitely are. And so these insurance companies, they're buying these intelligence companies, and then they're buying non-standard and specialty insurance companies, right? So what's happening is there's a game of pass the trash that's going on, right? They can say, okay, Tanner, you're 26 years old, you live in this area, you're a male, and this is what you're going to pay, and this is like the predictability of like what you're going to. This is how you're going to perform as a client. And if it's not within those boundaries, they pass you down to the other company that's the non-standard company because things have shifted. There's a lot of inflation. There's a lot of things that cost a lot more money now. So the insurance companies have become really, really conscious of this. And what they've done again is was a great opportunity for us because now their worst client became our best client. And we positioned ourselves to be able to catch
Sure.
as the people were being transferred down. But there's a lot of people that were left like nowhere to go. And we created a position for us to solve a problem. And I started seeing that this was a massive shift in the market. I believe within 10 years, the insurance agent is going to be the broker, I should say, right? Well, I'll even say the agent, right? So it's going to look much different. I don't know if there's really going to be as much of a middleman on there. I think what it might become is more of they can just have people go out and do their stuff out online. They can source it out to, somebody out overseas or whatever to do the customer service on it. And then if they don't like it, if the customer doesn't like it, then they can work together with somebody like myself that's in, high risk and specialty because they haven't figured out how to be able to wrangle those people yet.
Sure.
So insurance companies are about profit and pleasing the shareholders and showing that profitability within the company. So if they were able to use that technology to get to exactly where they want to be, why would they not do that? And then they were able to pass that down to the other company and still contain that business. So I'm going to use an example of Farmers Insurance. It was well documented that they pulled out of the state of Florida. Well, everybody thought that like Farmers was like really the big company there. It really wasn't. But the companies that Farmers owned, Foremost and Bristol West, they remained in Florida, which was 70% of their business. So they got rid of 30% of pulling out of that area that they weren't profitable and, shut down that market. There was a lot of stuff that happened in California too. Texas was another one. I assume that Illinois might be on the radar as well. And
Why is that?
These are states that there's a lot of losses. There's a lot of thefts. Like there's a lot of different issues that the insurance companies have faced, and they haven't figured out a way to become profitable.
And you've seen, I mean, just from personal experience, my home, I have 2 German Shepherds. And I work through an independent broker for home and auto.
Yeah.
They've had to shop around just because of the fact that now they're rating German Shepherds as aggressive
ferocious
breeds.
animal.
Now they're like, for the 2 Teslas, like there's some carriers that don't even want to mess with them because of the high cost of repair and then the fluctuating prices because Tesla doesn't work like Legacy Auto.
Yeah.
Legacy Auto holds their prices high and basically offers 0% financing, 2%, 3% in high interest rate environments to be able to keep their prices high because it keeps the used inventory. Like, how you like cars.
Yeah.
Like, how it is. I mean, they don't want to disrupt the used inventory pricing model because used inventory is part of their business too. And they hate companies like Tesla that approach it as like just a consumer product where they buy a used Tesla because for a period I was buying and flipping Teslas during 2022.
Yeah.
I'd buy like
we talked about that.
Yeah.
I think I had like 20 cars during that time.
I would get a Tesla, I'd come in, I'd turn around, go to a local dealership, say, hey, do you want to buy this? And Teslas were 6 to 9 months on back order at the time. And I just order one a month and I'd go to the dealer and they give me 3,000 or 4,000 over asking price or what I bought it for just because the demand was there.
Yep.
Fast forward now, like
the good old days.
Well, I bought the Model X. 2 weeks later, they dropped the price $20,000.
I know. I had that.
That drove me nuts. But it's also one of those things too. I always explain it like this: is as you know too, when you go and buy your toys, You can't worry about the price fluctuation because at the end of the day, you bought it, you were okay with it,
Yeah.
you agreed upon it. Nobody held a gun to your head and said, buy this. But still, it pisses me off a little bit. But at the end of the day, the insurance market, it's shifted so much. And like, why is that? Is that just because of inflation, losses? I mean, why is that kind of happening right now?
Yeah, there's like I said, the thefts have gone way up. I mean, there was like that highly broadcast thing with the Kias
Yeah.
and all the like it was the Kia boys, and they would they would be able to use like a flash drive to be able to start the cars. I had two of my cars, not one, but two of my cars stolen right off my driveway.
You did?
Yeah. Yeah, I had two cars that were stolen right off the driveway. And
Sounds like you need a bigger garage.
I know, or like, yeah, better security system or something. Yes, you're on the right track
You
with
need
that.
to tell your wife I
Yeah.
said that. You need you need a side garage whenever you pull
Right.
in the driveway to the right, a big
I'll
one.
have you have that conversation with her. So,
I will.
but the thing was with that is that a lot of the police officers as they came out there, they're like, hey, like we're not allowed to pursue these. We just got to let them go.
What does that even mean?
Well, they had the problems with the police brutality, and like
Sure.
that kind of trickled downhill with things. As far as that goes, they weren't able to pursue whoever took the car. So funny story with this thing, right? So I have this on my S class, right? There was a window etching on there, and it would basically it knew like where the car was at. So they tracked it down and they went out to North County, right? Imagine that. And so they found the car, and the police department out there, they called me up and they say, hey, we grabbed the car, we put it on a trailer, and we ended up, rolling out. And they said, we've got it back at the station now. I'm getting ready to walk into a meeting when they called me, and I was playing at Topgolf, right? I had a meeting out there at Topgolf, and I'm getting ready to tee off about 20 minutes later, and the same number calls me back, and I'm like, I was going to go up there. I had another pair of keys. I was going to go up there and, assess the damage and figure out what was going on. In my mind, I was kind of thinking, man, do I really want this car back? That's like the day that you discover that like OnStar really isn't as great as you think that it is.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so the thing was with it, they called me up and they said, hey, just to let you know, we lost the car. And I was like, what do you mean you lost the car? They said, well, I guess the person that had originally stolen the car came up to our lot, drove it off the back of the trailer. Like, I don't think there was any ramps or anything like that, and drove it off the back of the trailer and took off in broad daylight. And I was like, you know what? I think that person wants the car a little bit more than I do. And, it was just like unbelievable, because I'm thinking like, wouldn't you pull that into like a guarded area or gated or something like that? Not like leave it out on the front porch, for somebody to like come back and grab it. So
they may have left the keys in it too.
I mean, maybe it was a blessing in disguise. Who knows? But like, I know like with my daughters, she had a little GLE Mercedes. It was
I remember when you got her that.
It's the first car that she got. I caught so much crap for buying my kid that. And I was like, you don't understand.
I don't know, because I spoiled the shit out of my daughter, and
Right.
she's only 8 months old, so I can't wait, because I'm the same way too.
I want to see the hat collection for your daughter over there and stuff. Cause like every time I see her, she got a new hat collection. But my daughter is an extremely hard worker, and she's a goal setter, just like I am. And I've taught my kids that you set goals, you work hard to achieve your goals, and you get the prize at the end.
Yep.
Right. And so I said, you get good grades, you get scholarships, you get this, you get this. Like, my daughter's a junior, and she's probably 2 years into college at this point.
Sure.
So I'm like sitting here thinking to myself, like, college education, like, what am I going to be spending there and that sort of thing. And we set a goal. So she told me the exact kind of car that she wanted, and she didn't shoot low. She went for the Mercedes, right? So we ended up getting that for her. I made a promise to her. She made an agreement with me. A lot of people didn't see that. The other thing was too, I had a really good buddy of mine that was the person that sold me the vehicle. So they don't know what I paid for it, right? I got a great price on that whole thing. So I thought, until I learned a valuable lesson when the car got stolen. I thought, well, I took out a loan on this thing, right? So I did what any intelligent parent should do, is put their kid on the loan, right? So that they can start building some credit with you, right? And I was the co-signer on the loan. And I thought I got a great price for that car. So you said like where the market dropped out, right?
Oh my
So I
gosh.
didn't do gap insurance or nothing like that on this thing, right? I have a company that I could have sold myself a gap policy.
But you
And I
weren't even
didn't,
thinking
I
about it.
wasn't
Like,
even thinking, because I was like, man, I freaking scored on this one. This was like a retired loaner car. I'm good. Like, there's no way I'm going to bank on this thing. Actually, that was literally what I was thinking. I was like, man, I kind of maybe got the upper end on this. Oh no, $28,000 upside down on the car, according to the insurance company. And they weren't about to give me any more. And so I had to write a check for $28,000. And then I had to go find another car for her, because it's not her fault it got stolen. So I had to figure it out. That sucked. This is a time that, again, things aren't going so great for us. And I'm having to, like, my kids, they don't know any different, because I don't show my emotion like that. I just keep it all underneath the vest, which isn't healthy. But um, the thing was that, it's a valuable lesson that anytime you basically have a loan on anything, you need to make sure that you have that loan gap protection on your vehicle, no matter what it is. And if it's not on there, go get it, because and don't buy it through the dealership, right? Because the dealership's going to
the dealership
overcharge you.
offers it?
The dealership, they overcharge you for it.
Really? I didn't even know that was a.
It's like
Well,
10.
I haven't. All the vehicles I've had the past few years have been through Tesla, and they don't even do their own financing. So that's probably why I would never even know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a valuable lesson to be learned, but when we were called to identify the vehicle. Like, that's not a good call, right? We were called to identify the vehicle, and it looked like this person literally like went on an off-road trail. I don't know how you tear a car up so badly. The front bumper's ripped off. You got headlights hanging out.
Were
You
they
got
sourcing it for parts? Like what?
no, it wasn't even that. And the seat was just like, I guess the person that stole it was really tall, because like the front seat was gone, and it was just a back seat, and it was like kind of this, I don't know, like this makeshift thing that this person made, and they had like the drink holder that was normally like back by your elbow, and that was like,
How
they
did it
had
take to get this
the drink
back?
in this time. No, it was in the salvage lot, right?
Well, how long did
'Cause
it
it
take
was
between being stolen to when you saw it?
it was about 2 months. It was
Yeah,
about
so
2 months. So
it
we
went
had
through
to
a lot of action in 2 months.
So we had, and the S class was never found after that ever again, right? Then all of a sudden, so I thought, literally a week ago, a buddy of mine and former client, he buys these auction cars, right? And he fixes them up and everything else. And he posts this picture out there of an S65, right? And he was like, man, this thing is so decked out, but don't mind it. It's missing the doors and the wheels and everything else. And I'm like, I recognize, because I had like certain badging on the car, and I recognized that on the side of the car. Sure enough, I had said, I was like, I think you got my car. So we compared the VIN numbers and everything else, and he did. And they ended up finding it like some field way back in the back or something, and had to like lift it up with a forklift or whatever to get it out of there. It's just amazing. And the people that steal these cars, they use these cars to be able to steal more cars. And it doesn't matter who you are or anything. This is a lot of times, these are like gang initiations, right? So the gangs will drop off the thieves, and they have to steal cars to be able to find their way back. And that's like the initiation process with it. And I'm sure there's probably like drugs, fuel, and things like that, because, I mean, I'm seeing stuff in the car, my daughter's car, that when I was able to go down and take a look at it, it's a crime scene.
Sure.
But she ended up, we got her a different car, everything else. And that's been a whole nother experience in itself. Like, this little girl, within 3 months of driving, she has blown out 4 tires, right? She is just like, just like every other kid, not paying attention, trying to get places too quick. She's on Snapchat. She's over on, Twitter or whatever and stuff. She is answering back those different things. And she ultimately, like, she smoked a pothole. And I said, hey, the first one's on you, or excuse me, the first one's on me. I'll take care of it. Right. So it was an accident. Second time, she hits this box of nails. Okay. I don't even know how that even happens, to be honest with you. Okay. But I take the car, get it towed over to my buddy's, and he's the one that does all the work on my cars. And he's pretty fair with me. Right. He's actually supposed to be on the show like next week.
Who is it?
And it's Kevin Reefer.
Oh, I know Kevin.
Right.
He's
So
a good dude.
yeah. So I take it there, and he's like, man, these tires are just like mutilated. He was like, there's nails all up in the sidewalls, there's stuff sticking out the bottom, everything else and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I dropped the news to my daughter. Like, she worked all summer and she had a little nest egg and everything else. And I dropped the bomb to her of, remember that conversation that we had about, you're going to have to be the one that takes care of the next one? Well, unfortunately, you hit a trifecta on this one. There's 3 wheels, and it's going to cost, $900 to be able to replace all these wheels. And, she was obviously super upset about it, right? It's going to clear out like half of her bank account. And, I felt bad. I'm not going to say that I didn't, because like, as a dad, like, you want to be there, everything else. But I wanted her to learn the lesson and feel like, hey, maybe I'll be a little bit more cautious if this is on me next time, and I'm hoping, knock on wood, that she drives a little bit more carefully. But people, I'm sure, can relate with this with their kids. They go through, and this is where I talk about the high risk aspect of it, right? You get one kid in the household that spoils the entire bunch, right? So you see that, like, there's this one kid in the household, and they're creating all these problems, these accidents, everything else. And somebody that's been with, a good hands or a good neighbor type of a company, these companies, like, they all of a sudden they drop them, and they've been there for like however many years or whatever and stuff. And they're no longer within that mold of like where that company is going to be profitable. So, I'm sure a lot of people can relate with this, with, kids and becoming drivers and like the extra expense that goes into it and everything else. Like, we're trying to figure it out day by day as well too with that. And I'm an insurance guy. So like, I'm supposed to know all this stuff, but I can't. I'm like, hey, drive a little more carefully, because, it's, we don't exactly have the best driving history or the loss history over here. We got, 2 cars stolen. There was like $300,000 in claims. And then I had a exotic car that I'm driving on the highway, and my brakes went out.
Wasn't it like a week after you got it or something?
Yeah, it was 7 minutes to be
7 minutes.
to be exact. And lost control, smoked it, turned it around, everything on the highway. And nobody wanted to be able to insure me, So this is where, again, I've found resources to be able to fix problems. So looking at my own situation and say, how am I going to fix that? We've been able to adapt. We've been able to overcome and figure it out. And that's, that, again, that's really the entrepreneur mindset, is you just got to adapt, figure it out, and overcome it.
And don't get killed.
And don't get killed. Yeah, and don't get killed on me. So let's talk about, I don't know how much you can talk about the financial things and stuff. I know that you, like, there's a lot of rules and regulations and things you can't talk about, or that you can't talk about, but maybe there's some things that you can talk to us about, because I think that there's a lot of people that they know you as Tanner, who owns Crooked Feathers, but they don't know Tanner as, the insurance guy or the financial or the, the retirement planning or whatever it is. They don't know that side of you. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So as you know, we've got the pizza stores, we got Zero Guilt, we do all that. Hannah and Colton my brother and my wife actively run and manage that now.
Okay.
And actually, St. Charles is rebranding within the next 2 weeks to a new niche concept called Two Bros Pizza Co. And kind of the premise behind that was taking all the lessons we learned from our rapid growth and kind of like reassembling it to a location that never touched what the first location's numbers did,
Yeah.
but remodeling it. And then everything else I do outside of that, like I said, there's very little I can talk about it just because of the rules and regulations. But a lot of why I got into it was because of what we talked about early on, which was last year, was basically like you talked about it earlier in this show,
Yeah.
but it was focusing on stuff you're good at and dialing that in and focusing on it. And for me, I knew I loved the equity world. I loved working with people. And I was in personal training and fitness when I was in college. And I missed that because like in what we do with like the businesses and things like that, like I was behind the back end a lot. I didn't get to be actively involved in things. I was, but I wasn't very good at it.
Yeah.
I'm not a very good people manager. I'm not a very good business manager. I'm really good with concepts. I'm really good with numbers, and I'm really good with ideas.
Yeah.
And when I was looking for something that I could do where it's like, okay, like I like to play the game. And to me, it's like baseball. You know, obviously there's a team environment, but you got to go up and you got to take your swings. And that's like, that was a career path in an industry where I knew that I could go and I could control not the outcome, but control the process enough to where the outcome could be successful. And like you said earlier, everything is on you. And outside of that, I mean, I love what I do. I love what I do with the stores. I love with small businesses. And that's like literally like small business owners are kind of like my niche in my community. We're all the same. We have our kids, we have our families. We're all juggling 3 different hats.
Yeah.
And you talked about it earlier. You have to have a strong support. I don't know any really good successful entrepreneur. There are some,
Yeah.
but successful to
Very
what
few
degree?
and far between.
Yeah, to what degree? Like business wise, yes, but family wise, maybe not. But not having Hannah, like having a backbone for the family, like your wife, she doesn't work. She just works within the business and helps you with things, correct?
She
And
doesn't
helps with
work
the family.
inside the business, but she handles the house.
She handles the house, handles the kids, makes sure everything's good, supports you. And
Yeah,
that,
and I mean, arguably, potentially more because I couldn't do what I do,
without
and
her.
I mean, definitely on a mental aspect of
Yes.
that. There's been many times where I'm just kind of over it, and I'm just like I'm feeling down and out, and I mean, she'll come in there and pick me up,
Yeah.
and there's been multiple different things. Now she's been really, really patient with me as well. Uh, some of the things that I know that my wife has dealt with is where I'm sure there's a lot of wives of successful men, but we don't always look at the wives are the reason for the success.
They are though.
And it's
100%.
it's 100% of that. And a lot of times there's outsider eyes that look in, being like, "Oh, well, she sits around and she watches Netflix all day and like eats popcorn." You know,
Sure.
that's not the case at all. This girl's running around. She's like making sure that, because I'm real bad about like eating throughout the day. And, like I'll be on like my second pot of coffee or something. And she's just like, okay, it's time to switch to decaf or something, and, she keeps things going in the house and she's there to be able to, to be that emotional backbone in many aspects of it. With the kids and everything else. I mean, she's getting kids to practice and everything else. So like when she ends up not feeling good or going down, I definitely feel the
Overwhelmed.
impact on that. And I could not do what I do without my wife being present on that. And again, that's such a change because I used to be like, I don't need anybody. I got this, how is it so hard to be able to raise kids? Like I used to make jokes about like, yeah, it must be tough to like, drive kids to places and everything else until I'm the one driving the kids
Yep.
places and they're sitting there like throwing things in the back seat, choking each other out, everything else. And like her patience is so great. I mean, if there's one thing that my wife has definitely taught me to be a better man, a more loving person, and that it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to not just have to, be the Iron Man,
Yeah.
like it's okay to to admit to faults, and it's okay. Like, I'm a teammate. Like, we have a team household, and we all help each other out, and assist in the different various areas. So, she holds it down there at the house, and, I handle the business side of things and stuff. I got a real strict rule that I won't intertwine her in the business, because I did that with my first wife, and it just ended up not going so well. So I'm not looking to like repeat history here and be divorced again. Um, so yeah, just,
I agree with that though.
you
Like
know,
what I do now, Hannah's not involved with, and then
yeah,
vice versa. I stay out of a
might
lot.
be a blessing in disguise kind of for you.
It is a good thing
I
because
see you as being more of that too. Like, when I first met you, you kind of have that, like, well, first, you're a very trusting person, right? You're very genuine. You can see that by talking to you, and you're extremely intelligent. So for you to go into that, financial world, I'm not really surprised about that. And I'm glad that, maybe something that I said convinced you to go that direction.
well, you kind of, I saw what you were doing, like, and I saw what other people were doing. It was like that was the pivotal moment in that time period where I was thinking like, I like what I'm doing. I'm making good money again doing what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
I'm not very happy doing it. And it was a learning transition because that was when Hannah was starting to do a lot more. And like you said, I'm a big believer. I love women. I love my wife. I love my mom. I love my daughter. I love my dad and my brother too, but like women are the pillars of my life. They are. I mean, like that's that when I wake up every day, those are the people I do it for. My
You're
mom,
cool, but yeah, you're not.
my you know what? My mom was my rock as a kid. My
Yeah.
wife's my rock now. My mom's still a rock, and then my daughter's like the third pillar. And it's
Yeah.
having her was like the thing that really broke through because you look at her and I'm like, I got to do this for you. Like, people are scared in sales. People are scared in business, and they say, well, I don't want to go knock on doors. I don't want to go hustle. I don't want to do this. And my thing is like, you just don't have a why because you don't have a why. Like,
Yeah.
I look at my daughter every day and like, I'm working for a life to where she can get, I want to spoil the shit out of her. I want her to have everything she wants.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I was a mama's boy. My wife, I couldn't do anything without her. The support system, because for us, we're very hard on ourselves. Men that are in business are very, very hard on themselves. And the more I let her in and the more that she was able to help with things and just keep me grounded, the better. I don't like, for example, like I like to spend money. I love spending money.
Yeah.
She makes sure I don't spend too much money.
Yeah. Kids are expensive too. I mean,
Oh,
like,
I'll take Blake. I'll be like, oh, we need new stuff. And she's like, no. And like, Hannah keeps me frugal, which is a good thing because like me, like I'm bad about it. She'll always see it. Every time I go and pick up a new suit, I always order a new one every single time, every 2 to 3 weeks. It's a bad habit. I know, but like, it's just like, I like stuff like that. And
Yeah.
same thing for you too. When you were talking about what you got your daughter, people don't like to, let's say, pleasure themselves or buy themselves nice vehicles. Me, it's like, what are you working for? Like, if you like something nice, go get it. I tell people that all the time. It's like, nobody's telling you what to do with what you have. Just you don't want to lose it.
you don't always see the purpose of why, like, so there's nobody, as entrepreneurs, there's nobody that's like chanting you on. You know
No.
what I mean? So like, you have to
People almost want to
motivate
see you fail
yourself.
to feel
Oh,
they
100%.
want to see you fail so that way they can feel like they made the right decision.
Yep.
And I think that's why people look at people and say, why are you doing this? Why would you do this? Because it would make them feel more comfortable. And I look at people and I'm like, why aren't you doing more? What do you have to lose? We're all going to die one day.
Yeah.
We're all going to die. You can't take your money to the grave.
It's true.
And, if that's going to, like, I always tell Hannah, it's just like, we were talking about skin, she's like, well, she's, like I said, Hannah's very, very frugal about things. I'm not. And we were just talking about skincare. And she's like, I really want to start doing this, whatever. But, like, she's like, I want to be at XYZ first. Because she's unbelievably frugal. I'm like, do you feel like you're going to have better performance? Like, literally, this is my question was like, are you going to feel more confident doing what you do?
Yeah.
Are you going to feel like you're going to wake up in the morning and feel better about yourself? Yeah. Well, why won't you do it? Like, it's literally like, I feel like things like that are an investment in yourself. You go train, you go work on yourself, you hire coaches, you do those things. And I see it as like, before I got into what I'm doing now, is like, who wants to listen to a short, fat guy? a short, pale, fat guy.
Right.
Like, who wants to listen to that? And it's like, I'm just saying, like, people don't want to look at the full picture and they want to conform to things and think like, well, it's equal. Everything's equal. Nothing's equal. You know it as best as anybody. Like, you eat what you kill.
Yeah, it's true.
And you have to change yourself. People want to say, well, this is just the way I do things. And like, I don't, Steve, you're my coach and I'm working for you. And, you're telling me everything I need to do to be successful. But I just feel like I'm pushing people. And I'm sure you've heard this before. Like, I don't think, I want to do it that way. And it's like, okay, we'll do it this way. I don't think so. I'm going to try it this way. They go try it this way. Yeah, I'm still not having success. And then you say, did you try that? Well, no, I think, nah, I'm going to try this. And then they end up quitting and they go to another company. And that's like normal America today. Spend 2 to 3 years. They weed you out after they figure out you're really not doing anything in the corporate world. You go to the next job and it's just like a perpetual cycle.
Yeah.
And that's why people like us, like, I think it's harder though, because we don't make money unless we perform.
What I like about being an entrepreneur is, like you said, you eat what you kill, but you have the limit. Like, you don't have a limit on your abilities of what you can be able to do, like where you can accomplish. You can live life on your own terms. One of the things that, I know people probably were like, well, why does he need this car? Like, whatever. I don't need anything.
But you
Right?
like it.
I like it. I'm not going to say I don't. Absolutely. Like, who wouldn't like that? Tell me that you don't like driving around in a freaking Ferrari, right? Tell me you don't like that. Okay. Well, but here's the thing. Did you recognize the Ferrari?
Yeah.
Did you wonder what I do when you saw the Ferrari? Did you want to engage in conversation with me? Did you want to find out more about what I maybe did for a living? And then the other thing here too, you see a person that has accomplished these things. Success breeds success. So I get where I become a part of these car clubs, right? And I put myself around men and women that are wildly successful, and they all have backstories, and it's a community, and you get to knowing different people. And then I don't know how many different people that have either become clients or led me to other better places of surrounding myself with that. So that's really, it's just like kind of the key to the city. You know what I mean? And not to say you got to go buy a Ferrari to do that, but here's the thing, right? So that Ferrari wreck that I had, it went like within 24 hours. Like, it was like went nationwide viral.
No shit.
Yes, it went across. I mean, man, I saw stories of like, I was an angry porter that like stole the Ferrari from the dealership out in West County. I was like trying to
Weren't you on
outrun the
270?
What?
What
No,
were you on?
I was on Highway 40,
40? Going towards Winsville?
Yeah, no, I was right out there, right by freaking Hanley. It was right over by that, and it was.
Are you Ferrari for life? Are you going to ever get
I
something
really
different?
am, man. And there's a reason why I love that car so much, or that brand so much, because they won't just like let anybody, like, they know their worth.
Sure.
And, if you look at like the things that go into it and the people that are behind it, again, it's, they know their worth. They won't let just anybody have it. And, you do rise up through the rankings, but like just the community that's involved with it. And I mean, I don't know. I like a horse more than I like a bull. I mean,
I'm not a big, I think Lamborghinis are cool.
I mean,
but
you
like,
got to respect the hustle no matter what it is. I mean, so like we give each other a hard time. We bust each other up over, like, I mean, we'd say like, do you cross your legs when you drive your Lamborghini, or, like, I don't fit in that thing. Like, so that was like the game changer for me. I'm a big guy, right? So I'm like 6'2", 230, right? And I don't fit in the dang thing, right? So I'm like, you know what? Like, we just made this really easy, but the car drives really nice. It catches a ton of attention. And that's good and bad, like it really is. It is good and bad.
Attention's good.
But like I said, this went viral where when I had wrecked the Ferrari, it went viral across the nation, and it was like millions of views. But the next thing I knew, I had all these new followers. I had all these people that were making inquiries about my business, people that would send me messages, and some of them weren't the nicest messages. that was like learn to drive or whatever. But these are all people that are just, they're not happy in their lives, and they're going to, project that. Hurt people, right? They're going to project that onto you. They're angry and upset that maybe they couldn't get to that point. And, like it was just another stepping stone for me. But there was a lot of things I learned in that scenario, because when you have it and then you're like high on life and all of a sudden you don't do it, like it is a massive ego blast.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you're getting contacted by people that like want you to come out to a car show, or like, be on the Make-A-Wish Foundation, to help some little kid. And the thing
No
is
little
that,
kids got helped after that accident.
yeah, right. So, um, that's actually like one of my big drivers is, with these kids and like how they can dream to, to have different things in life and work hard to be able to get those things. So I went to this Cars and Coffee event, right? And there is a gentleman who also has a very wild podcast, and he has a huge supplement company in the St. Louis area. Okay. And he ended up kind of breaking out the showstopper. There was a Bugatti that he rolled up in, and everybody's taking pictures, and and then he steps out and he's got a big presence and everything else. My son ran up to this guy, okay, and like I'm surprised he didn't have like security or anything like that, but he ran up to this gentleman, okay, and he just would like started conversation with him, because he didn't care.
Oh, he was probably
anything.
just
He was just
crazy
like,
out of his mind. He's like,
can
this
I
is
get
fucking
in and
awesome.
can can we go for a ride? Like, can I come by your garage and see your other cars? I mean, the guy is well known for
Sure.
having a lot of cars. And I think you know who we're talking about. But this guy has put in work like nobody's business. And he probably doesn't have to work anymore, to be totally frank, right? But he's been able to create a community around him, create a business around him that has become so wildly popular, and he's really, really excelled. And I honestly believe that his brand is definitely one of the most recognized, if not the best supplement brand around. And the thing is with it is that he's trying to, like, he had conversations with my son. Like my son was like, that was the best thing ever. Like he let me touch the car. Like, this guy, I mean, the whole car was carbon fiber. Like it was amazing. The thing had to have been like $3-4 million. It was a Chiron. I'm not a big Bugatti fan or whatever, but I know that they're super expensive, 7-figure vehicles. And there's another guy that, he had another hypercar. And this guy, he ended up letting him, sit in the car. He's going to give him a ride, that kind of thing. And, when kids have the opportunity to absorb this stuff and then they have things to shoot for, you're not limiting them to what their capabilities are. I want my kid to dream big, and I want my kid to go out there and work his butt off to be able to make sure that, he lives good. All these things, they're all props. In the end of the day, you can't take them with you. All this stuff, like technically it doesn't really matter, right? That one day can change and you don't have this stuff anymore. Okay. You're one day away from that. But at the same point in time, it gives you something to work hard for. So if if you are working hard for your family, your daughter, and you got little eyes that are now on you that are saying, hey, I'm watching you, Dad. I want to be an example now. I want to show my kids to work hard, and I want them to be proud of what I do. And I don't want to tell them no all the time. There are times we still need to tell our kids no. Okay. But, I don't want to tell them no all the time. I want to be able to also make sure that my kids have opportunities that I didn't have. And I want to set them up for success. Now, where they take it, and as I pass the baton to them, that's on them. But I know that I've done my half and I've come 50% of the way, handed off the baton, and now it's time for them to go to the next level.
Well, I will tell you regarding the supplement company and the gentleman we're talking about, my cousin works directly for him.
Hmm.
He has created the most undeniable culture and business that I've ever seen. Like, I don't know him personally. I know a lot of people that work there.
Yeah.
It's undeniable. And
Well,
I think that's like the best word to describe what they do is undeniable success from the inside out.
yeah.
And I think that's just amazing, especially with your son, because don't you remember being a kid? And like I do. I remember seeing my parents had friends, a lot of my mom's friends and dad's friends were entrepreneurs. And, you know, there was this guy named Ray, and he would always have the newest, coolest cars, owned a big concrete company. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever because he'd always, like back in the day, every year he got a new car. Every 6 months he would. He'd get the new Hummer H2 when it came out, you know, the
Yeah.
new Escalade when it would come out. And he was just a good old country boy that made a lot of money, but he just worked hard. And like I always remember, like those
That's
were
it.
the people that like I looked at and like I was like, that's why I love cars. Like I thought it was so cool because as a kid you see that and you're like, man, this is awesome, and I want some of that. And that's why I love hearing those stories because that was me when I was a kid. Was I saw that and like I kept that drive kept going. It was like I do want these nice things. I want them. Like I crave it. Not in a bad way. Like it's not. I went through that shift where it's not my identity anymore, but I still love it.
I could have really hated on this guy, right? Because remember, I had the supplement company, right? And this guy also, he owns well-known supplement retail stores in, mainly the greater St. Louis area, right? And I could have absolutely like hated on this guy, but instead I started looking at like, what was this guy's playbook? How was he able to develop this? And I started looking and taking pages out of his playbook of how I could become successful. And I will tell you, there was a lot of lessons that were learned because now you're in a new business
Hmm.
and you're, a little fish in a big pond, and you're no longer like the top of the food chain over here and stuff. You're not on top of the mountain looking down at the other ones. You're now looking up and trying to be able to climb that mountain all over again. And I remember that this guy, he put me through the ringer. He put me through the test, and he was not going to let me just get away with anything average. And I actually like sat down and thanked the guy. I was like, you know what? Like, you made my life hell, but I learned a lot of ways to be able to adapt and overcome. And I learned a lot of ways to get creative, and I learned a lot of ways to become successful. And we found that, competition was a great thing. And nowadays, like I said, I mean, I respect the guy's hustle. I respect what he does and how hard he works and, the things that he does. His life, just like mine and yours and anybody else's, I'm sure there are things that we don't see behind the scenes. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm sure he spent many a nights being in the anxiety attacks and,
We all got that.
like sleepless nights and different stress moments and, times of, distress and everything else in the business. And I know his business partner as well too. And I mean, like, I'm telling you, I got in a room and I sat down with these guys, and I'm like, kind of like, I'm in the lion's den at that point, and I was sitting down and I was just like, I don't know what I was thinking. I like literally went into the lion's den and I was like, oh, if I talk to these guys, maybe they'll be a little less rough on me. Not the case at all. It actually turbocharged it from that point forward. But let me tell you, man, I got out of there, and these guys, I mean, I felt smarter after I left. They really taught me some very valuable lessons. And, we can learn from people that are more successful than us. And, the thing is that like, we don't need to be hating on those kind of people. We need to be learning from those people. And it's okay to be like, you know what, like this guy has, he's done more than I have, right? And I should like, it should piss me off. I should want to be like, I want to be blazing the trails in front instead of him, and it should make you angry. But instead, I turned that into a positive to where, again, I rethought how I was going to do the different things. And it still to this day affects me, even though that supplement company is no longer around for under my ownership. Even though that supplement company is no longer around, I still take a lot of things from that guy's playbook. And I thought that it was extremely awesome. Now, while my kid kind of like busted through like the ropes that like he wasn't supposed to go through and went up and talked to him, the guy still like he took a second to talk to him about cars. And, I thought that was really, it said a lot about him. It said a lot about like what a good person he is and like where his heart was because, you know, he could have been like, get out of the way, kid. Like I'm over here like doing my thing or something, but he didn't. He took
Well,
the time and I always say to my wife and any of my friends or whatever, if I ever become that guy that isn't stopping and take a minute to be able to, be a good human being to somebody, then I need to be spoken to, you know.
well, and I'm sure, how much time do we left? Are we running
I
short?
we actually are over on
Okay.
here on
Well,
time.
I'll leave it with
Like
this
way
one.
over. Yeah.
I'll leave it with this one thing, and that's something that I'm sure you can associate with. Is I think competition is vital.
Yeah.
And I used to not like competition. I used to not want to like my competitors. But the one thing I've learned that has made me way better is being humble enough to where if there's people that are where I want to be, listening to them and not thinking I'm smarter than them, and then keeping blinders on and not listening to anybody else. Because I think that's the biggest distraction. If I want to be where somebody else is at, but I'm listening to somebody on the sidelines or somebody on the other side, taking their advice, whether it's from fear, failure, whatever it may be, I literally just, my mindset is block it out, tunnel vision, only listen to those that are where you want to be. Yes, you can take little tidbits from the other sides, but we can only, it's like having being a baseball player and having 7 different hitting coaches. You need one really good hitting coach.
Right.
You need to trust and believe in their process. And you can take little tidbits of information, but outside of that, wash it away and just focus on the present.
Well, man, I really appreciate you being on here with
Yes,
me.
sir.
Thank you